So we are really glad that we made it today, and we are here. This is for us the beginning of a big journey.
Sorry, I saw Zoe, and it was impossible not to react.
And this event, which is the Secular Cultures event that deals with design, fashion, and craft, is the second year we're collaborating with the British Council on this in this area, and it's an extremely important part of what we do as an organization.
I think it's also important that the time has come to hear the word fashion and not just think of really expensive clothes and glamorous catwalks. And everybody is starting to understand, slowly but surely, that we're talking about a huge industry with a huge impact on the planet, not just in our everyday lives when it comes to our taste, but it has to do with our footprint. And I think it's important to be talking about something that we will never avoid anyway, and we have to enjoy it. We deserve this kind of enjoyment, but we have to do it following some principles and respecting some values. We're just saying that it's no longer an issue of climate crisis, it's an issue of climate justice. And coming from the public benefit sector, if we are talking about public benefit, we cannot just close our eyes and pretend that everything is going to be all right, because it will not. And the time has come also to understand that it's not just some kind of activisms for eccentric personalities who like to demonstrate in the streets. It's something that we all understand, and we have to take action. And I think that action is the word for the ONAS Foundation, that the point is, what do we do? And we're saying that because, yes, we are into arts, obviously we are into culture, but we are also into education and health. So whatever we do, and of course, huge interventions in the urban environment of Athens itself. So what we do is not just watching the ice melt, but working by supporting research, by talking about it, by creating platforms for people to understand, by collaborating with the state in order to get into schools and work on that. And of course we do our own thing, and Christos Karas is here by trying, and hopefully we will get the certification regarding the creative culture program in collaboration with Julius Bicycle. So hopefully we'll be proud to say that we did get the certification in a few months from now. But please.
And just to add to that, this year's program brings us beyond just fashion. And we do look at design and crafts, and this is absolutely crucial to understand that this is just not just the end result, which we see in our daily lives. And as Aphrodite said before, it is the whole process behind it, the mentality, the business model, and the event today is structured along these lines to see how the process is developed, how the mentalities could be changed, how the business could be changed.
But you know, I will disagree with you.
She always does.
Yeah, but he likes it. You like it. The reason why I disagree with you is that it is just fashion, and it's not just fashion, because fashion obviously means also the way of doing things, the fashion of doing fashion. So I think that since we're talking about the process, and the process is the way, it is all about fashion. It is all about the fashion of doing fashion. So yes, we have to address issues that are related to materials, to design, to cultural heritage, and how we approach something that everybody wants to look at as something extremely superficial, but no, the surface is not the surface ever. It's just the upper layer of something very deep. So this is our job, to dig.
To dig. So I have to thank a few people before we move on. So I would really like to thank Rebecca Early for the amazing program she has developed, the whole British Council team, Maria Papaioannou, Katerina Galani, that helped. We're working together for 2 years on these programs and many more years as an institution as well. And they've done amazing work. I really would like to thank our production crew, our comms, and the innovation and digital collaborators, my good friends and alter ego, Iraklis Papatheodorou, Ioanna Margariti, and last but certainly not least, Katerina Varda, who has organized the whole thing to its smallest detail, and I'm really thankful.
And I'm thankful to Zoe for seeing her face here again, which is amazing. And I want to apologize to the panda, because we're talking about all that, and I'm stepping on a wonderful animal.
Yeah.
It's a red panda.
And it's endangered species.
But you know, panda in Greek means forever. So hopefully, panda will be here, panda.
Forever.
Okay, so
Thank you very
go.
much. Let's go.
Η έννοια της κυκλικότητας έχει να κάνει με το πώς αναδομούμε τις διάφορες αλυσίδες παραγωγής και αξίας. Όταν πάμε να κατασκευάσουμε κάτι, από ένα ρούχο μέχρι μία συσκευή, κατά τέτοιο τρόπο ώστε να μπορούμε να επαναχρησιμοποιήσουμε κομμάτια της. Δηλαδή, κατασκευάζουμε κάτι, είναι έτσι κατασκευασμένο ώστε να μπορώ να πάρω ένα κομμάτι του και να το ξαναβάλω στην παραγωγή, να το ξαναχρησιμοποιήσει κάποιος άλλος. Και με αυτόν τον τρόπο είναι φανερό ότι μειώνονται τα απόβλητα και έχουμε ένα καλύτερο περιβαλλοντικό αποτύπωμα. Προκειμένου η κυκλικότητα να γίνει καθημερινό μας κτήμα, να μην είναι μια εξωτική έννοια, είναι απαραίτητο να την έχουμε από νωρίς στα σχολεία. Αυτό είναι ένα σύνθετο μάθημα που θα ήθελα ιδεατά, σε έναν ιδεατό κόσμο να υπάρχει, στο οποίο έχει κομμάτια που αφορούν περιβαλλοντική παιδεία, κομμάτια που αφορούν πολύ απλές αρχές αλυσίδας παραγωγής, πώς παράγεται κάτι, πώς πηγαίνει στην αγορά, τι γίνεται όταν σταματήσουμε να το χρησιμοποιούμε, και κομμάτια τα οποία έχουν να κάνουν με μηχανική, με κατασκευή, με making. Η ψηφιακή τεχνολογία και ο ψηφιακός σχεδιασμός ως έννοιες πολύ συχνά τις σκεφτόμαστε ότι δεν έχουν να κάνουν με το φυσικό κόσμο. Ωστόσο, δεν υπάρχει αντικείμενο που να έχουμε πλέον γύρω μας, σχεδόν, εκτός από κάποια πιο παλιά, το οποίο να μην έχει σχεδιαστεί ψηφιακά. Αυτό θα πει πολύ πρακτικά ότι όταν θέλουμε να ανασχεδιάσουμε τα αντικείμενά μας έτσι ώστε να μπορούν να ακολουθούν τις αρχές της κυκλικότητας, πρέπει να ξεκινάμε ήδη από το στάδιο του σχεδιασμού, του ψηφιακού σχεδιασμού. Κατά δεύτερο λόγο, προκειμένου να καταλάβουμε ένα t-shirt ή ένα παντελόνι από πού ήρθαν ή ένα τραπέζι πώς φτιάχτηκε, καθώς η διαδικασία παραγωγής είναι όλο και περισσότερο ψηφιακά ελεγχόμενη, δηλαδή το εργοστάσιο ξέρει πού ήταν, τι έγινε, έχουν στάμπες σιγά-σιγά, μπορούμε να καταλάβουμε ποια είναι η πηγή των υλικών μας. Άρα αυτό σημαίνει ότι σε ένα όχι πολύ μακρινό μέλλον θα έχουμε τη δυνατότητα να κάνουμε αυτό που λέμε το περίφημο sourcing, δηλαδή να καταλαβαίνουμε τις πηγές των υλικών, των ρούχων και των αντικειμένων που χρησιμοποιούμε με ψηφιακές τεχνολογίες που παρακολουθούν την παραγωγή και την κατασκευή τους στο σημείο στο οποίο εμείς τα καταναλώνουμε, ίσως από κάποια ετικέτα ή κάποιο άλλο υλικό VR ή XR που μπορεί να έχουν πάνω τα ρούχα.
Kalimera. Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for being with us. I would also like to bring on stage my wonderful colleague from London, Parvinder Marwaha, who is the EU Program Manager for Design. I think, Aphrodite, we're going to follow your example. We're going to do the same.
But we won't argue.
Yeah. We're going to say a few words about Circular Cultures. Circular Cultures program is an EU program, is a British Council EU program focusing on design, materials and crafts. It aims to promote greater awareness around circularity, develop skills and the knowledge of the sector, develop the skills of the makers, of the craftsmen, of designers, and create mainly EU networks amongst the Greek designers, European designers, and their counterparts. The program aims to build on the experience of Crafting the Future that we organized here last year, and it was a collaboration with Fashion Revolution. But we want to take the program one step further. So last year it was all about sustainability. This year it's going to be all around circularity, and we want to explore how circular design can be applied to fashion, design, new businesses, as well as to our everyday life and to our consumers, to our behavior. It is in the core of what we do at the British Council to support creativity, to enable capacity building amongst art professionals, cultural professionals, and to provide response to global challenges. We want to, in a way, nourish and facilitate a working culture that encourages openness, innovation, and we want to provide safe spaces. I would like to say that in Greece, and then Parvinder is going to say a few words about the UK priorities. In Greece, our priorities are sustainability and circularity, capacity building for cultural professionals, art professionals, with a special focus on museums and galleries. And we aim to introduce new voices within programs that enable social cohesion and provide a voice to marginalized groups. We are very, very fortunate to have on our side the Onassis Stegi, the Onassis Foundation. I would like to thank Aphroditi Panagiotakou and Prodromos Tsiavos. Of course, I mean, it's not only, about the two of them, it's about the team at the Onassis Culture and the Onassis Stegi, Katerina Varda, Iraklis Papatheodoru, I don't see you, I can see you. Of course, our curator, Professor Rebecca Riley, from the Circular Design, from the Center of Circular Design of the University of the Arts in London. Big thanks to our speakers, to our panelists, to everyone who has contributed to the development of this program. It has been a long process. I would also like to thank, I don't see them here today, maybe they will come a bit later, PCAI, Polyeco Contemporary Arts Initiative, and the artistic director, Kika Kyriakakou. We have worked with them, and you can, on a really amazing exhibition of video art, and that you can see throughout the building. Kores, our sponsors, for their support. And last, but not least, special thanks to Parvinder Marwaha. We have co-developed and co-designed the program throughout its stages. Big thanks. I know I'm full of thanks, but it's been, I want you to realize that it's been a long, long process. Big thanks to my colleague at the British Council, Katerina Halani, the arts coordinator. I'm really sure that these 2 days will make us rethink our values, reframe our mindsets, ask the right questions, and start exploring the endless possibilities of circular cultures. From my side, it's a big thank you to all of you. And we are here to co-create and co-shape the continuation of this program.
Yes,
and
thank you. Thank you, Maria. That was amazing. And Maria has worked incredibly hard on this program. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. We've got delegates here from a lot of EU countries, so I'm super excited about that. Like Maria said, it's been a really interesting journey, and I think it's been amazing working with Onassis Foundation throughout this, but also our delegates that are here and our speakers from the UK and Greece. So welcome, and thank you everyone for joining. I guess I just wanted to make a quick note to say, in the architecture, design, fashion team at the British Council, we're really very much interested in this space. We feel like the UK design sector, broadly speaking, the interdisciplinary design kind of disciplines are very much asking these questions and wanting dialogue around it. And as a cultural relations organization, we are really happy and grateful that we can facilitate things like this and work on larger collaborations like with the Onassis Foundation, but also within this space we've worked with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and we're really fortunate to have Joe here. We've also worked with Fashion Revolution and other larger kind of collaborations, because we believe that we need to be having these conversations. Organizations can work together, and it allows us to not only talk about circular design, but also to circulate ideas and share knowledge, and that's something that we're really invested in at the British Council. Last year, just to show, a couple of projects, we did a circular design lab, which, brought about designers from sub-Saharan Africa together in London to talk about this narrative. And we feel like circular design and making is very much a global conversation we need to have. There's a lot of nuance in, how we perceive it here in Greece, but also in the UK. And what we want to do is try and mobilize real conversations around the similarities, but also the differences. And I think, Aphroditi mentioned it. I think, I would argue that it is very interdisciplinary in the sense we need to have multiple perspectives from it, from the public to organizations like us, to policymakers, to kind of impact change. But I also understand there's an anxiety about it because people have been doing things a certain way for many years, and there's a change that's been asked from us, and an urgency, yes, to do with climate justice, but also to do with migration and other issues that have to do with materials and the way we see them. So I guess that's, I wanted it to be quick, but obviously I've gone on quite long. Note just to say that we're very much in this space, and we're really excited to make new collaborations as well through this conference, but also we'll be working on other things with Onassis, which we're really excited about. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I want people to know more about what circularity means in different countries and cultures, because I feel like it's not the same for how it is in the UK, how it might be in Greece or in India, in sub-Saharan Africa. So a shared understanding of what circularity might mean for different cultures. I think children can learn about circularity through going to the very root, literally by working with agriculture more and learning how materials are made. They're made from the seed actually. They can get closer to the ground and work with agriculture, seeds, crops, grow materials themselves, so they actually learn where they come from. And, I think teachers can help them nurture plants to show them how you keep things alive and in a system. I think children can learn about circularity through making, through designing, through being a bit more aware about their environment, their connection to the environment and what they're using. It can be as small as their toothbrush to drinking water. Water has a water footprint. And if they were more aware of where the water came from, I think children would be more aware, kind of the more they get to see and learn about the world, because then they would see how people do things differently, use things differently. There's circularity in terms of materials, but there's also circulation of ideas and knowledge. And I think social media platforms can really help to circulate the right type of ideas and things happening in this space. So it's about circulating ideas.
Okay, now let's begin. I hope this is going to work. So it's a program we've put together to think about circular cultures. It incorporates circular design and all aspects of the circular economy. So it's not just about finding ways for businesses to preserve their resources. It's about how we're all part of the change that's coming, the change that needs to happen. And circularity is based on sustainable and social design. Sustainable is the improvement of things, of materials, of the things that are resource heavy. We've been working with sustainable design for 25 plus years. Social design takes it a step further. People like Ezio Manzini from Italy have been pioneering the thinking around what changes are needed for people to live better, for people to prosper. So circularity embraces that thinking, and it uses innovation and new materials to drive forward these changes. And what we're experiencing then are new kinds of economies, new kinds of businesses, new kinds of processes and structures, and new habits, behaviours, and cultural meanings are emerging as well. So all of this is part of circularity, and we frame it in our research centre as materials, models, and mindsets. All of these different aspects need to work together to achieve the change. And we do need to change. And I think lots of our speakers today are going to show us just how much change is needed, how difficult that change is, but also how these are opportunities for radical new innovations and better ways of doing things. I come to you as a textile designer, as somebody that looks really deeply and closely at our material worlds. And I've found in my long career as a textile designer that we can often be the hidden ones in the system. The fashion designers will present the work from the textile designer. And in the old days, they used to be unmentioned, unnoticed. But textile designers are systems designers. They look closely and they make the materials. And in making the materials, they are actually influencing the production systems and the way that we use the textiles and even the way that we dispose of them. And so by looking closely, looking really deeply, and then stepping away, we can bring two kinds of knowledge, two really useful kinds of knowledge, the micro and the macro, and both of those are really needed as we move forward. So we're going to go through 3 sessions today and to have 2 panel talks. The first session is themed materials, and we'll see a film from Carol Collett, who explores biomaterials and bioproduction, the way in which nature can be harnessed and embraced, how we can revisit our relationship with nature and find new ways, post-industrial revolution ways, to make the materials of our futures. This will be followed by Kate Goldsworthy, who's a really deep expert in material systems. The work that she does is incredibly useful and influential in how businesses, industry designers, and other experts see these new materials, understand them, and use them. There's a lot of myth, there's a lot of shrouded language, and there's a lot of confusion around materials. Are they better? Is it sustainable? I think Kate's a real expert at helping to shine a light on some of these myths and to allow us in to really understand how we should be using them and selecting them. And Sital, she's going to bring the narratives of these new materials to us, to show us this whole world of stories and identities and new meanings that exist within this world of new materials, and how important this will be for users as they change behaviours and as they shift to more circular habits. In the models section, we're going to look back and we're going to look forward. We're going to see how things have been done in the past. In a pre-abundance era, before we had this plethora of choice, we lived very simply, and things were constructed and kept and remade. And in the archives of museums, there is a richness for us to look at how these things were done and to transfer that knowledge forward. And she'll be using the Fashion from Nature exhibition work that the exhibition that she curated to show us how the archive in the museum can be used to project forward. Jo from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation considers how design, globally, how design needs to consider its role and its importance and its actions. And as an organisation, their circular design guide is reaching thousands and thousands of designers. And the message here really is that if designers who can have an 80 to 90% impact on a product's efficiency and sustainability performance, if designers can make better decisions, make the right decisions, if they can work in circular systems and design the new circular systems, then they will be a force for change. It will be economic, it will be cultural, it will be about user behavior. But designers are this huge sort of population across the globe that can be motivated and re-educated into working differently. And Zoe from the Royal College of Art will be bringing some of the brilliant work from her students there, but also it's her own activism and her own fashion background is incredibly important to see how innovation is taking hold of the next generation of designers, and actually how education systems can foster and support and grow those new attitudes as we sort of embrace the Extinction Rebellion movement, fashion revolution, post-plastic economies. Our students in universities are changing, and they will be the force to harness for the future. And we're going to hear micro talks from Vicky Moodaloo from Eating the Goober, and some of her amazing journey of taking a real circular product into the marketplace. How is it done? What are the challenges? What kind of knowledge do you need? What kind of new knowledge do you need? And what is that like on a day-to-day to grow a business, but with that sustainability and that circular passion? And then we move into the mindsets theme, because nothing changes unless we change. We have to change the way that we live our days, the way that we fly, the way that we take holidays, the way that we eat food. These changes are happening all around us, and it's having a huge impact on how we consider design and products. And so Nick's work with Community 21 is a really enlightened approach to using waste and making new materials, but really seeing the systems and embracing the communities and the people who are actually affected most by these materials. And Hannah will tell us about some of the brilliant work that goes on in a project called ECAP, the European Clothing Action Plan, and her campaign with her team, Love, Not Landfill, and how this sort of vigour and energy and passion and knowledge needs to feed into very considered actions and pop-ups and guidelines to actually inform users and industry about our current behaviours, but also the alternatives. And we need to feel excited about these things. They need to feel fun, and they need to feel like a viable alternative to fast fashion habits that are happening all around. And we'll also hear from Zoe Angela Kapulu, who has a brand called Topodom, and the way in which she hacks technology to make new jewellery and accessories using biomaterials. The thinkers that come to circularity often come from different backgrounds, from different training and different disciplines, and they bring that knowledge and they make new entrepreneurial models. And to deliver their ideas, they have to make new technologies and new processes. During the day, there'll be 2 panel talks. The first one, Old Circles, New Circles, will bring to the stage Marco Rindina from the European Fashion Heritage Association and Valicia Gukotski from an Athens brand, which I'll read out, 2W0 plus 1NE plus 2. I know there's a catchier way of saying that. I don't know what it is. They're going to join our first panel to really look at the way in which culture and museums and technology, the past is informing the future, and how we can drive those changes forward in more collaborative and informed ways. Our second panel, Making Circles, brings our designers and our makers and our entrepreneurs back to the stage to really discuss how the design actions, the places that we design, and the relationships that we're forming, the new relationships that we're forming with people as we design new circular cultures. But it's you today that really matter. We've brought together some brilliant speakers. We have, I think, asked the right questions, but it's your questions that are going to really count. It's the information that you're going to take in and how you're going to process that, and the questions that you're going to ask. Be provocative. Ask the difficult questions, because the panel, sorry guys, right, they're here to take your tricky questions, because this is not easy, and this is not a certain and clear forward linear path. This is complex and challenging.
My name is Professor Rebecca Early. My job title is co-director for the Centre for Circular Design at University of the Arts London. We are very focused on circular design, so our approach to circularity is to really understanding what design can do, how designers all over the world can stop designing things in a linear way and start to design things to flow through circles. Circularity is the reuse of resources in ad infinitum. Social media is incredibly important for circularity, because really for the first time in our history, it's all about people and how they behave and what they do with products, not just how they buy, but how they use and resell and redistribute products and then dispose of them when they no longer want them. And then the companies get those back, and the remanufacturers remake those materials into new products. So social media will help us with these circles. Design is behind the circular economy. It will be the creative force that gives us the new products and the new services and the new systems that make circularity possible. At the moment, what we do is design things that we take and we make and then we waste. Design needs to change so that what we do is borrow and then make and then use and then remake. I work with school children quite a lot in terms of teaching them about sustainability and the circular economy. I start with the uniform and I get them to understand their clothes and materials, and then I get them to think about what makes them happy and what they look for when they get new things. And I try to introduce play and fun, because I think that's a really important part of behaviour change. There's so many ways that we can change the curriculum. and I'm very, very passionate about this. It's very difficult to use the words sustainability and fashion in the same sentence because we know that fashion is about change and about reinvention, which up until now has really been about buying new things. But what we can all do is think about buying differently and using our clothes differently. And that means we all have to be a little bit more conscious of what our wardrobe contains and how we acquire new things. We can buy second-hand, we can swap between our friends, we can join online platforms that loan us clothes and that we can return clothes to. But really I think it's a bit of everything. It's like all things in life, we have to seek balance. Sometimes we will buy new things, we will want new things. So let's find at that moment in time the best way to acquire that new thing. Just needs a little bit more thought.
Good morning. Today we will be discussing biotextiles and their potential to help transition to a post-petrol industry. I'm the director of the Design and Living Systems Lab at Centre St. Martin's in London, and I'm interested in designing with and for living systems. That's because too often in the past we have been designing killing systems, especially in terms of our biodiversity. This is an important number, 1.0. That's for the one planet we can live on and thrive as a species. But today we're consuming the equivalent of 1.7 planets to sustain our lifestyle, and we're using natural resources faster than they can regenerate. We now know that we have lost 60% of our wildlife population in 40 years, and we've officially triggered the 6th biodiversity extinction in the history of the planet, with 1 million species at risk. According to the International Panel for Climate Change, we now have 10 years left to stay below a 1.5 degrees Celsius increase in our atmosphere. To achieve this, we will need to halve our annual CO2 emissions by 2030. So how do we design for the textile industry in a climate and biodiversity emergency? How do we shift away from oil-based processes and oil-based materials? Especially when we know that textiles use 98 million tons of non-renewable sources a year, and a quarter of the world's chemicals. Now let's look at the bigger picture. I have compiled a timeline that correlates textile material innovation together with the world population increase. We can see that at the time of the first production of rayon in 1910, there were 1.7 billion people living on the planet. By 1941, after the invention of nylon and polyester, which are made from oil, there were less than 2.5 billion people on Earth. By the year 2000, we have reached 6 billion people, and we're beginning to see the production of what is now called fast fashion. In 2016, when the world population has reached 7.5 billion, the first silk made by bioengineered yeast is launched. And by the year 2030, there will be 8.5 billion of us, and by 2050, nearly 10 billion humans. This is according to the United Nations. So since the invention of the first artificial fiber and for about 100 years, textile material innovation has largely relied on a transformation of oil for new fiber development. But what happens between now and 2030? There will be 1 more billion people living on Earth at a time when we need to radically reduce our CO2 emissions. So how do we produce textiles for another 1 billion people, whilst transitioning to a post-petrol economy? Nothing short of another revolution is needed. And I believe that biodesign can offer an alternative route and reboot our textile system with lessons learned from biofabrication models found in nature. This is what we call biomimicry. I define biodesign as a means to integrate the inherent life-conducive principles of living systems, which are cyclic, solar, and local, into the design process. And I situate biodesign and biotextiles within the emergence of the bioeconomy. With my research, I ask how can we collaborate with biological organisms to fabricate new textiles? And first of all, I try and understand how nature makes a textile-like material using biological fabrication at ambient temperature without toxic byproducts. Here is a lace bark, one of my favorite examples. It is produced by a tree endemic to Jamaica and very much looks like a woven fabric. Yet, this is grown by a tree at ambient temperature using solar energy and local nutrients. So we have a lot to learn from how nature makes inherently sustainable materials, and this is the focus of my research. So today I will show you a project which explores the potential of biology to develop new textile embellishments. I work with mycelium, which is effectively the root system of a fungi. You can see here the white mesh of a mycelium growing onto a black silk. I will be showing you prototypes that include water-repellent coatings, permanent pleating, tie-dye effects, biopatterning, as well as bonding. Mycelium can feed on a wide range of substrates, such as sawdust, waste coffee grounds, as well as textiles. You can see here the lab where I'm developing the experiments. So first of all, could we use textiles to replace some of our chemical-based textile coatings, such as water-repelling? Can we repair a fabric with a mycelium coating? Mycelium is naturally hydrophobic, and when we apply it to a fabric, we can obtain a naturally water-repellent biodegradable coating, as we can see here and here. We can also use it to repair a fabric and to create a starch-like effect. Could we then also look at pleating a natural fiber at ambient temperature and a permanent pleating? Here I have grown mycelium into mechanically folded cotton fabric. Once dried and baked at 30 degrees Celsius, the mycelium holds the folds into position, and even hand-washed and dried, the fabric remains pleated. What other patterning techniques can we achieve with mycelium? This is what I call a tie-grow, a reinterpretation of a traditional tie-dye technique with mycelium. The cotton cloth is tied and inoculated with mycelium, which will grow over several days. Once grown, the ties are removed before the fabric is baked at low temperature, and we obtain a tie-dye effect with mycelium. One of the challenges of using mycelium is how to control where and how fast it grows, as well as what patterns it creates. And with these samples, I explore how we can achieve more defined patterns. This one is a unique sample. This prototype is made of 100% waste coffee grounds inoculated with a mycelium culture. The mycelium slowly aids the coffee grounds to form a rubber-like materials, except in 4 areas where contamination prevented the growth. This is a photograph of the prototype when it has just been removed from its protective bag after 21 days of growth. Once baked and cleaned, the patterns are revealed. They have appeared completely independently of my control. As such, it's effectively a mistake. But this experiment demonstrates both the potential and challenges of working with a dynamic biological system which has a life of its own. Here, it has created fractal, floral-like patterns. And to finish, I will show you a few samples that experiment with mycelium as a binding agent to create non-woven textiles. By enveloping and digesting the material it grows onto, mycelium can bind loose fibers together, whether they are natural or synthetic. We can use this process to create non-woven textiles with surplus yarns from dead stock. Or we can use it to grow constructed textile materials with lace-like patterns. So we have seen how this project explores the potential of mycelium to replace current oil-based or energy-intensive textile finishing processes. Further development is now needed to test and upscale these techniques. This is only the beginning of a quest for both petrol and bio-based textile economy. Thank you for listening.
It's really great to be here at this amazing event. And when Becky sort of suggested my coming as one of the speakers and having the wonderful opportunity about talking about my favourite topic, which is circular materials, I think just to give a little bit of context, Becky and I both sort of trained as print designers, print textile designers, and I remember during that time it was referred to often as surface design. And in my whole experience of BA textile education, I didn't once have a lecture about where materials came from. You know, the fact that oil produces many of the materials we work with, and that cotton farming produces most of the rest. And I think this was something that was always missing at that point, and something I've been interested in ever since. I spent most of my time not in the print room, but in the boutique room, melting plastics, not to be advised. But I think the thing that intrigued me was the state change of materials, the fact you can take a solid material, turn it into a liquid, even a gas, and back again. Sort of this lack of permanence, and the way that as a designer we could control that state change. And I think really that's fundamentally, for me, what circular design and materials is all about. I don't need to talk too much about the emergency we're in. I'm sure it'll be mentioned in every talk. Carol brilliantly outlined the sort of the closeness of the emergency, the number of people, you know, an extra 1 billion people in the next 10 years. That is just mind-blowing. So what can we really do? You know, what are the solutions? So I'm here really representing the Centre for Circular Design and the work that goes on there. And if I had to really sort of talk about what it meant in very brief terms, I think we're interested in the role of design and collaborate with many, many different actors around the circular system in order to improve the sustainability of the materials we're using. So we never work alone, pretty much. We, you know, every single project, either we're working with a material scientist or the user or industry, or we're actually embedding ourselves into the science lab, or, you know, working with an engineering company to develop a new material. It's never ever in isolation, and I think really if there's one message today, that's the one I would like to get across. A few years ago, I was asked to write a creative piece of writing, not something that we often do, and to work collaboratively with a photographer to talk about materials from the sort of the potential of afterlife. You know, how could we, if circular design is all about designing closed systems, or at least sort of systems that can go on repeating, what does that really mean? What does it look like? So I wrote a series of, I guess, provocations about what it means to design with the end at the beginning. And then the art director and the photographer produced some beautiful images to go with it. And really, I think, for me, the most important thing was the power of design in collaboration with other disciplines to really redefine each material's story. If we think about materials not as objects or substances, but as part of a journey, then how as design can we redirect those journeys? And at the same time, we were working on a very different piece of research, which was looking, it's another timeline, looking at the development of materials, which is fascinating when you think about the huge explosion of material innovation that happened in the mid-20th century with the discovery of synthetics. I mean, there's so much fascinating material around this. But if there were a couple of things I took from this process, one is that the huge dominance of synthetics, it's hard to avoid at the moment. Many of them, if not all of them, are from virgin oil-based materials. And also the decline in natural materials, not because necessarily of a desire to reduce our use of them, but purely because we've kind of reached, I think, peak production of many of these fibers. And interestingly, and again, this seems like a contradiction. We had many conversations with the environmental scientists we were working with on the project Mistra Future Fashion. Their research showed that in sustainability terms, in climate impact, fibers are not as important as we think they are in terms of sort of production, the main impacts. The real energy, water, pollution, transport impacts happen in the fabric production stage, so from fiber right through to up to the boundary of garment production. We've done lots of projects around this. It's not the subject of my talk today, but I think just using it as a way to show that sustainability and circularity are part of the same picture, but they're not the same thing. When it comes to circularity, all of a sudden the materials are really, really important. At the moment, a very small amount of materials, I mean, actually only 1% are taken from fibre back to fibre. And in between that, the sort of the recirculation processes, the reusing as clothing, downcycling, fibre reuse, they are incredible sort of ways of keeping that material alive and in circulation. But it's very complex, and it's not always to do with the fibre themselves. So the sorting and the feedstock companies are not set up to really pick out fibres specifically. There's a lot of exciting work going on in this area, but the minute that we are able to chemically recycle fibres at scale, this whole landscape will really shift. I like to feel hopeful about this space and feel that really we're heading towards a material revolution. Like Carol, I really believe that we've kind of reached as far as we're likely to get with new fibres, you know, fibres made from our current resources, and we're moving into a point of almost undoing materials and rebuilding them again. So either regenerated celluloses from food waste from a million different places, and also our ability to retain the value in synthetics and keep them in circulation. There's some incredible work going on in this area. And as designers, we have to understand it. If we're designing products that hopefully will be reclaimed in this way at the end of multiple lives after being worn and used and cherished as long as possible, then we have to understand the building blocks that can then be re-established. So in very simple terms, materials are built up of the raw material and the process, and quite often those things get either conflated or one gets ignored. And a very small project following on from the timeline was looking at, okay, how can we explain to designers the complexity of this material equation? So for example, polyester, we know we can make it from oil, but we can also make it from cornstarch, a biopolyester, and we can also make it from milk. You also make cheese from milk. You wouldn't mix the two things up. And bamboo is also a really interesting one. Often when we talk about bamboo, the focus is on the agriculture and how it's more sustainable, which in many cases it can be. But it's often turned into a viscose, another sort of semi-synthetic. It's not a natural fibre at the point when we're using it, or very rarely. And I think these lines get blurred way too often in our industry. So you have to think about the raw material can become semi-synthetic through processing. Synthetics even, I mean, especially in the world that Carol showed us, this sort of world of bioengineering, biomimicry, synthetic biology, we can actually turn synthetic materials back into bionutrients now. So those lines are blurred. And this was a much more comprehensive piece of work, kind of on the same theme from our colleagues at the Research Institutes of Sweden, who we've been working with for over 8 years now, looking at that same mapping in a way, but on a much more whole industry approach. And there are some things to take from this. It seems that bringing in, or interestingly, bringing in waste as a material, which often you don't see in these kind of schemes, they're able to show that sort of complexity that you could take waste streams with synthetics and bring them back into the synthetic fibre picture. And hopefully the idea is that the small corner of that synthetic fibre box will expand and expand until we don't need to use virgin oil anymore. The second interesting point is that the plant fibres and the regenerated fibres come from the same source, but again, it's the process that affects them. And even with animal fibres, we're used to sort of very direct animal fibres, but that's changing now with bioengineering and the discovery of more sort of engineered proteins. So if I had to try and sort of summarize what this means, this world of expanding materials that we're seeing now, materials from coffee grounds, from all sorts of bio-food waste, from cotton, from cardboard, from existing fibers, are actually being turned into materials we already know how to work with, how to design with. Either recovered synthetics, many different ways to do that. Biopolymers, which have similar principles in terms of how malleable they are, but replacing petroleum with bio-based oils. Regenerated cellulose in many, many forms, whether that be from, as I said, cardboard, cotton, many different types of cellulose materials, but through a chemical process, as they often are, into regenerated cellulose and this new exciting area of bioengineering and engineered proteins such as the spider silk. So they're not natural fibers in the way we quite often talk about them. It's not from field to fabric. There's a whole industry in between, and our job, I think, is to make that as clean and beneficial as possible. So just for the last few slides, I want to zoom in a little bit on polyester, which is not always a sexy space to talk about, but the really interesting thing about recovered polyester is it can directly replace the virgin polyester. It has the same functional and aesthetic performance characteristics, the fiber-to-fiber, chemically recycled polyester. And that's not the same with other recycled fibers. Many of them have different or slightly reduced functional properties. And sometimes for a garment, you can get away with that, but there are many applications where the engineering potential of a material is vital. And it's huge. We just can't get away from the fact that it is the sort of the biggest fiber group we currently have. I mean, this is quite a scary thought, but by 2025, it's been predicted that we will produce 90.5 million tons annually, and that 98% of future fiber production will be synthetic. Let's make sure they're recovered synthetics and not virgin ones. And I think there are three really interesting areas that certainly our research is engaging with at the moment in terms of collaborations, but that are going to become more and more relevant in the next few years. One is the microplastic problem. It's really reached the headlines. There's a lot of research going on looking at it. But it's complex. We're currently working with microbiologists in Exeter who have conducted many studies looking at microfibers. So not talking about the plastic that washes up on the beach. These are the fibers that get into the ocean and many times settle to the bottom of the ocean or get ingested by sort of small sea life. They're not all plastics. They're 80%, up to 80% cellulosics. And the problem with cellulosics is they release their toxic compounds very quickly. So this isn't an argument between fibers. This is about cleaning up the chemistry of our industry and about really understanding how they get there in the first place and how can we mitigate that fiber loss. So quite often it's presented as a plastics problem, and it's much, much bigger than that. The other area I think is producing some super exciting research is the area of transparency, tracking, and big data. So our ability to self-certify or to understand the complex systems and supply chains we have to in textiles has become much more sort of diverse in terms of inputs. And there are some really exciting companies that are using big data, sort of verified data from companies to understand exactly where the fibers, the materials, the processes come from, and using fantastic data visualization techniques in order to express them to us. One really fascinating part of this, which I heard about fairly recently, is a company called Oratane, who use forensic science to identify not only what a fiber is, but where on the planet it comes from. They can accurately place a fiber, a cotton fiber, to within a few sort of square miles of the planet based on the forensic modeling. And that does something interesting, because that takes the power of transparency out of the hands of the companies and into anyone who wants to commission them to do a study. I think that could be an incredibly powerful tool for the future, and they're working on synthetics as well. And finally, you know, it's not an exciting area for textile designers or fashion designers often to think about, but the way we handle our waste streams, the way we make sure that anything that can be worn gets worn and reworn, the way we tackle these huge sort of global barriers that are being set up at the moment in order to keep value in our waste streams is going to become incredibly important. The minute that first fibre-to-fibre production line opens up at scale, the feedstock providers will respond, and they're already working on some incredible technology to identify quite complex fibre mixes. So just to finish, really coming right back to the beginning, what does this mean for design? I have the absolute luxury to spend most of my time sort of working with colleagues at the Centre for Circular Design and scientists to be able to ask questions all the time. But I think if there's one thing that I would say we can all do and we must do if we're talking about systems and circularity is collaborate like never before. And that means collaborating with people who don't agree with you, maybe, who start on a different point of view, and you convince each other along the way. Finding new ways to work together. It's not a natural thing to put a group of designers in a room with scientists and expect them to use the same methods or even the same language. And I think, you know, one of the projects we worked on recently, developing those facilitation tools, and this is something Becky works a lot on, you know, how you break down those barriers and make meaningful progress is really big work to be done. And I think we have to just understand that the frontier of science, the frontier of this is moving further ahead all the time. It's incredibly difficult to reach it, and the only way we can have a hope is to work together. So I'd just like to end on that point, hopefully within time, and thank you very much.
It's amazing to be here. Thank you so much for having me. So I'm Seetal Solanki. I'm the founder and director of Matter, which is a studio, consultancy, and school. And basically, we're a research practice exploring the relationship between ourselves, material, immaterial, and the virtual, and the matter around us. My talk is titled, "We Are Not Materialistic Enough," and it sounds quite provocative and perhaps quite contradictory, but I will explain that in more detail as I progress. So, we are never without materials. These seemingly mundane fragments and blobs of metal, plastic, ceramic, and glass are the stuff from which our whole civilization is constructed. Yet, perplexingly, while they do so much for us, we rarely pause to marvel at them. In fact, most of the time, we ignore materials. Their ubiquity is precisely the reason it's so easy to forget just how foundational a role they play in our experience of the world, of how we relate to and express love for one another, of how we sculpt our bodies and identities, of how we fabricate the present and the future of everyday life. Throughout history, societies have discovered and developed materials, made tools and artifacts from them, and in doing so, constructing themselves in the process. In many ways, we're living out the material dreams and needs of our ancestors, with much of the lifestyle that we're accustomed to today standing as a product of past inventions. In order to do this, we need to address our relationship with materials. This raises the question, what will the next 50 years look like? What will we dream up? And most importantly, who gets to take part in that process? And this quote here really succinctly puts the position we're in right now and have been for many years. It's a quote by George Monbiot, who's a journalist of The Guardian. He says, "We are often told we are materialistic. It seems to me that we are not materialistic enough. We have a disrespect for materials. We use it quickly and carelessly. If we're genuinely materialistic people, we would understand where materials come from and where they go to." And I think that really places more emphasis on this idea of circularity and also through a cultural context as well. We still have so much to learn from the planet. Exploring, experimenting, and working with Earth's materials has led to so many groundbreaking discoveries, from the everyday to the unexpected and awe-inspiring. To date, human civilization has never existed without materials. They are the very glue to our existence, as ultimately everything is made from something. But we've abused our time on Earth. stretching its resources to the ultimate brink in a bid to feed our all-consuming culture and ever-growing need to own and to experience. All forms of life are equally precious, and so are their needs. The universe, contrary to common belief, was not created for humans alone. But human behavior tells a different story. Today we create, cultivate, and continue to extract more from the planet without looking at the copious amounts of products that we already have. The mass consumption has resulted in piles of waste in landfills that we either export to other countries to deal with or to burn, creating an insurmountable amount of pollution. We have all seen the tragically disturbing images and headlines, and sadly will continue to. These are Earth's responses to our relentless activity. It is absolutely impossible to ignore the connection between human action and the accelerated environmental crisis we are currently experiencing. Indeed, our epoch has officially been named the Anthropocene, marking the age of significant human impact on Earth's geology and ecosystems, including the climate crisis. But what can we do independently and collectively to curb this disaster, if at all? In order to address the planetary scale problem and climate disaster, humanity needs to address its own internal imbalance. Our relationship with consumption is taking an enormous toll on our planet, which is in fact the evidence and external reflection of an incredibly damaged relationship with ourselves. Ultimately, in order to understand ourselves, we should first understand that our values interlink with our beliefs, which steadily influence our habits. Working backwards, we should start with the knowledge that we're part of something a lot bigger than ourselves. If by only understanding that it is our mutual responsibility to take care of the Earth. If we are to divert the current narrative, our relationship with value needs to be reframed. There is not so much a crisis of materials, but of how we think about them and use them and organize them. And that's what the quote actually says. We're quickly moving into a world where the challenges and desires we're trying to address are far too complicated for researchers in any single subject area at any single scale to resolve. The skill of the 21st century's great thinkers will not be cleverness in one particular area or discipline, but rather knowing how to use materials as a bridge between disciplines. As a global society, we're going to need lots of people with different skills to tackle the complex issues that face us today. The power of materials is that they transcend the boundaries of multiple disciplines. They can act as a catalyst for bringing diverse groups of agents together, whether it be engineers, designers, architects, biologists, botanists, farmers, environmentalists, or anthropologists. And this is a very sort of loose diagram of my own career path. And I've worked in all of these areas and still continue to, and they are increasing as well. And fashion and product, I've worked for Alexander McQueen as head of print and textiles. I'm a textile designer by training also. And I've worked across many different fields in order to understand the value of textiles or the value of materials and the impact that they can have across all of these different sectors. And throughout my, 15, 16-year career span, I've had Matter for about 4 and a bit years, coming to its 5th year this year. And there's still such a lack of understanding, and perhaps there's an increasing respect being addressed with materials, and that's really what my role is to get people to understand materials, but also respect them. Could the responsible use of materials offer us an alternate reality? Materials grown from bacteria or mined from landfill could soon be a mainstream reality. This is all presented in my book here called Why Materials Matter, which I had the privilege to write and publish by Presscell last year, well, 2018 now. And basically, I wanted to bridge the gap between academia and science. And that's where materials have currently existed, or previously existed now, I would say. And there's a bridge between these areas because really everybody should understand materials. Everybody works with materials in some way, shape, or form. Everybody uses materials. Everybody experiences them. So why not allow everybody to be involved in the dialogue? So this really brings together a bit of a guide and a collection of examples of materials from different places around the world, from something quite everyday and how that's being repurposed into something that's perhaps in a, well, leather offcuts from the fashion industry are being reinterpreted into something more structural, so that can actually be used in, say, architecture or interiors or retail. And then there's a sciences chapter, which is actually addressing things that are perhaps what Carol Calais was talking about earlier, things that are grown in a laboratory, so dye that can be grown from bacteria, that can be used as a fabric dye, using very little, if no water at all. Or something more abstract, so there's a chapter called Expansive, and it's looking at things like water as a material, digital materials, even air as a material. So there's a lot that can be sort of understood when it comes to materiality. Basically, it's everything. The field of materials is expanding at a rate faster than we can study, let alone master. With a recent estimate counting over 160,000 unique materials in the world. That's enormous, and we're not even utilizing them to their full potential. What's more, when we begin to study a material, we're immediately launched into an ever more complicated system of scales and structures. It's by looking at a material across these different scales, the nano, micro, meso, and macro, that we begin to understand its molecular makeup, mechanical properties, and experiential qualities. Complexity at this order of magnitude defies any single way of knowing. Rather, it necessitates an array of techniques from computational modeling and measuring to experimental trial and error to sensing and observation. So how I would describe working with materials, which is what I do, is very similar to a chef or a cook. So to bring this down to something less academic or critical, it's very simple, actually. So how a chef can use one single ingredient and use it to its ultimate potential. So example, eggs. Can be fried, baked, poached, all of the things, scrambled even. So this allows for an entirely different process, texture, and also an entirely different experience because of the processes that this ingredient has taken. And so you can have a dish which is like lamb three ways, basically. And this is an example I like to call algae 10 ways. So algae it's a really important organism, algae, and I'm sure a lot of you are aware of it. And the investment that it's actually taken. So algae produces up to 80% of the world's oxygen and therefore can be considered one of the most important organisms on the planet. Its ability to grow in abundance at speed and be harvested in our oceans poses a solution to constraints we are faced with due to increased pressure on land. So here are some examples of people working with algae. This is macroalgae, so seaweed. So Julia Lohman, she's working it at a human scale. So these are like really large structural installations. So using the strength of it. Ari Jonsson, who's an Icelandic designer, he's treating it as a potential biodegradable plastic alternative. Ninka, who's a Dutch designer, she's looking at it as a yarn, so a textile and also a fabric dye. And then she's gone into looking at it as a paint. So the frame of these pieces of furniture are using algae paint, a biodegradable plastic, and also the fiber on the chair. And then you have something that could potentially have more solid surface quality, because what Jonas and Nikolai are doing is thinking about it or treating it as a self-binding material, so not actually using any extra adhesives or glues to be able to bind these materials together. And this is using seaweed, seaweed's gelatinous natural texture, as well as seaweed itself. And then there's an architectural example, so this can be scaled up. And this is perhaps a more modern interpretation of what insulation can actually do or protection of a building can do. So this is in Denmark, but it's actually taken from something that's actually really traditional. So in Denmark, they places or houses that are placed by the sea, they have seaweed as thatching, basically. Or you could be eating it in IKEA someday soon. Obviously, a lot of Asian cultures eat algae and seaweed in their diets on a daily basis. But this is now being perhaps translated into a more European context. So this is a project done by Space10, who's IKEA's innovation lab. Or it could be used as energy. So this entire building was powered for 2 weeks solid using algae alone. Or a printing ink for clothing and for paper. Or it could be potentially something that could power your home. So this is really looking at how versatile a single material can be and changing the narrative around it. And ultimately, that's where we need to be. And that's kind of where the stage we're at right now. And to really encourage this narrative change, I think it's trying to address it in a more sort of layman's terms, as well as using academic sort of research and science to bring it to a space where everybody can understand it. So ultimately, we need to change the narrative, which informs behavior change, which then ultimately changes the system. Thank you very much. My name's Seetal Solanki. My job title is I'm the founder and director of Matter, which is a research practice, and we focus on material, the immaterial and the virtual, and how they build relationships between ourselves and the planet. Circularity is a really big part of what we do because we want to understand where things come from and where they end up, and that really relates to materials and our relationships with them. It's an ongoing debate and conversation that we start to implement when thinking about identity of a material, the life cycle of material, and also the systems around materials. So that's something we're always championing. I think the way of introducing a more circular way of learning is like adding rigor, like scientific and academic rigor, along with a bit of humor, basically. So this humorous side to learning is perhaps something that is a bit more accessible or relatable. It doesn't feel like it's too academic or too scientific, because materials exist in both of those worlds, but we're trying to make it way more accessible and friendly for people, because everybody works with a material. Everything is a material. Building these ideas of care, like systems of care, is a really important one. So whether it's something that they feel they have an emotional connection to, or a sentimental connection to, or something that's nostalgic, all of these emotions start to build this idea of caring for something. There's ideas around repair, obviously, and these things aren't really that new. And it's something that is trying to be reinterpreted into something that is perhaps a bit more relatable now in our sort of modern world. And I think this idea of care and respect is something that I feel really deeply passionate about in terms of like the fashion industry or any industry. I think circularity is framed around these ideas of care and respect. There are many accounts, I think, that Instagram accounts, for example, or even Twitter accounts that actually enable people to feel a bit more connected to or accountable to what they can actually do, or the ways in which they can change their behaviors. There's a lot of people out there that are actually informing that, of maybe having a zero waste lifestyle, or objects or products that you can potentially purchase or use in your daily lives to change your habits, to become more a circular mindset, I guess, which then informs behavior change. I think circularity is care and respect. And I think it goes back to this idea of caring for something, understanding where it comes from, where it goes to, being accountable for that, which means in turn you're being respectful of those materials or items that you end up owning or experiencing. And I think it's really understanding what happens to it afterwards. So these systems of care and respect are, for me, so much about circularity. Creating a new culture is partly what we're doing in a way, but I think a lot of it already exists. It's just reminding people and bringing more awareness to it first. And then the way that people interpret it in different cultural contexts or in different industries or practices is entirely up to them, because it's very nuanced as well. It's not a linear approach, or it's not a singular approach either. I think a lot of it is very messy and chaotic and entangled, and there's so many interpretations of these forms of circularity, I think, and I think that's what's so interesting. I think this exchange of learning from each other is a really great way.
Hi, I'm Nick. Thank you very much for your fabulous talks. Kate, I just wondered if you could just expand technically a little bit just on this cellulose, this 80% cellulose thing. I mean, what is that? What, you know, if it's so significant, can you just give us a bit more? I was just keen to learn a bit more about what that really represents.
I mean, we were kind of bowled over by this as well, and I think it's fairly new research. I did sort of follow up on the conversation to find the paper and the research that was looking at it, but I think the premise is that, you know, fibers escape from everything. In fact, all materials are shedding and, you know, disintegrating over time, all the time. And so the fibers that end up in the ocean, when they were doing their marine biology sort of experiments, they found 80% of them were blue cellulose. They couldn't be more precise, could they? Becky was part of this conversation as well. They couldn't be more precise about what they were. I think potentially they're viscose is an assumption. But they seem to think that a lot of them were natural-based fibers as well, and that what they found is that the natural fibers degrade more quickly, and so basically dump the chemicals very quickly. So if I mean, they're working on plankton level, so if a plankton swallows a fiber, it's quite big in proportion to them, and a chemical dump can be very harmful. And with the polyester fibers, they hang around obviously for a lot longer, and they're an irritant, but they don't always dump the chemicals in such a rapid way. So it's not, one's not better than the other. But that's
that's really important.
But it brings everything into the picture. I think sometimes, especially, you know, and I've read actually articles in the media about that very same research that doesn't give you that message, because it's much easier to just say it's all plastic and just use the word plastic to mean everything. And I think, you know, what I loved about Seetal's talk was, you know, trying to understand the complexity of materials, but in a really, you know, cooking such a good example, because I think everyone can connect with that and understand that, you know, we benefit from materials in so many different ways. I don't think it's practical for us to isolate one thing and say, right, we're not going to do that anymore. Until we've got a better alternative, or until we can, you know, find ways to improve it. But yeah, I mean, that was probably one, that and the DNA, the forensic fiber tagging, are the two things that I just think are mind-blowing at the moment in the material world.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, welcome to well, I've really enjoyed the talk today. I just had a question about mechanical recycling, having to do with Kate's talk. You mentioned chemical recycling of polyester fibers and nylon fibers, but wouldn't a waste stream process be mechanical recycling of some of these fibers as well? I mean, I mentioned that's something that we're working on as well, and I was just wondering, why isn't it more, let's say, relevant or an easier approach?
No, absolutely. I think one thing I've tried to sort of make really clear this is a very small part of the research we do at the centre, and we've got some brilliant PhD students at the moment looking at the next wave of mechanical recycling, and I really believe it all has to work together. We have to make things better, keep things longer, circulate them while they're useful, Mechanical recycling is fantastic, you know, for dealing with all those materials that we can't deal with yet because the chemical recycling isn't happening at scale. So that's kind of the best place we are for now. So absolutely, it wasn't part of the talk today, but.
And just a question which is just out of my ignorance relating to the reuse of natural fibers. I mean, I understand that synthetic fibers can be recycled in via different ways, but what would be the solution regarding natural fibers? Would that just be downcycling to another type of reuse? Would that be a completely different industry? It's just a question out of ignorance how natural fibers are reused and repurposed.
Well, again, I suppose it's down to the cooking example. So if you take a natural fibre in the waste stream, you can mechanically recycle it, and there's brilliant innovation making that better and better. Or you can put it through a chemical process and turn it into a regenerated cellulose. So regenerated cellulose is viscose, lyocell, you know, those sort of materials. So they're semi-synthetic. They're not sort of fibres as nature grew them, but you can do that with cotton and with cardboard. So I think there's, you know, it's called downcycling because it's not getting it back into pure cotton, value, yeah. Right? And viscose has different properties, but it's still very useful. And if it can then be recycled again, you know, with people like Lenzing, then there's great potential in it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much for these exciting talks. My question, though, we are still in the materials part of the of our day, but I'm really curious how we can actually bring this kind of knowledge and experience with materials at the school level. So how can we actually do that, not just in a university, a research center, an R&D department of a big house? How can we actually bring it to the students? Does it mean something beyond just letting them know about it? Does it mean creating labs? I'm asking very practically and also from the Onassis perspective, because for us it's a constant agony. How can we actually bring this message and listen also to the experience of children, which I think they are at the center of our debate. Thank you.
Yeah. I can definitely answer this question. So I guess partly what I do with my practice is humanizing materials. And what that means is trying to create a more emotional connection to materials, and therefore that encourages care. And once people care, they start to bond, you know, with materials, for example. So I've developed a lot of different tools to be able to engage people in a slightly humorous way, but also it's with rigor as well. So it's been heavily, heavily researched in order to have a more humorous approach, and therefore becomes more accessible and relatable for people. So I've developed something called a materials quiz, which is going to be part of one of the workshops tomorrow that I'm hosting. And this really helps people to start to understand themselves through materials. So they will end up with a series of profiles of how they would be described as a material. So that could be, I'm empathetic, or I'm caring, or I'm safe. You know, these types of descriptive words, rather than using the current material language, which is actually very, very limiting. Textiles. Textiles, there's like so many different textiles that you can't just put it in one box. It's made from so many different things. It's created with so many different processes, has so many different outputs. You can't just like put it in one box. So the categorization of materials is really, really terrible right now. And so metal, glass, plastic, every material has an entirely different behavior and characteristic. So we need, like children, to start, everybody, not just children, to understand the emotional qualities of materials as well as like the practical qualities or perhaps functional qualities. And this quiz is part of that. So we've also developing something called a materials horoscope. So people start to understand their star sign or themselves as a material as well. And yeah, there's all sorts of things like this that we're developing, so people relate to that, relate themselves to a material, and therefore it becomes more human. And this is not just for adults, this is for everyone. So yeah, that's part of the school.